Our story begins in the heart of darkness, in a world consumed by war. The date is August 2nd, 1944. The time, the stroke of midnight. High above the slumbering mountains of central Serbia, a land groaning under the heel of German occupation, a lone American aircraft circles like a ghost against the moonless sky. Its engines are a low, anxious hum in the vast silence. Down below, in a remote mountain meadow near a village called Pranjani, a single, defiant spark flickers to life. A signal fire, a beacon of hope in a conquered land. The pilot spots it. He banks the plane, making his approach. And then, three figures leap from the belly of the aircraft, plunging into the black abyss. For a moment, they are just falling shadows. Then, three parachutes bloom in the night, silent white flowers that are quickly swallowed by the dark canopy of the trees. One of those figures was Captain George Musulin. He was 29 years old, a mountain of a man forged in the steel country of Pennsylvania. A Serbian American, born in New York, he was the son of immigrants, but America was his home. He'd played college football for Pittsburgh, even won a national championship in '37 before going pro. He was big, tough, and, most importantly, he spoke fluent Serbian. This wasn't a football game. He was an operative for the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, America's wartime spy agency, the forerunner to the CIA. With him was Master Sergeant Michael Rajacich, a radio operator. He too was a Serbian American, a young, resourceful expert whose fingers could make a shortwave transmitter sing with the intricate language of Morse code. The third man was Specialist Arthur Jibilian, just 21 years old. Everyone called him Jibby. An expert in communications from Ohio, he was of Lebanese descent. Jibby didn't speak a word of Serbian, but it didn't matter. His job was a vital one, to be the voice in the wilderness, the man who would keep an unbreakable radio link to Allied headquarters in Bari, Italy, 300 miles away across the Adriatic Sea. They hit the ground hard, the rough terrain offering a violent welcome. Tangled in parachutes and gear, they quickly gathered their equipment, radios, weapons, medical supplies. The forest around them was alive with the sounds of the night, but within minutes, new sounds emerged. The rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig. Figures began to emerge from the trees, men armed and bearded, their uniforms worn, their faces etched with the hardness of the wild. They were Chetniks, the Serbian guerrilla fighters fiercely loyal to their commander, General Draža Mihailović. The Americans were led through the darkness to a farmhouse. Inside, a man was waiting. He was 51 years old, with a graying beard and sharp, penetrating eyes that had seen 3 years of brutal war. This was Mihailović, once a colonel in the Royal Yugoslav Army, now the commander of a resistance that had been fighting the Germans since his country fell in 1941. His men controlled pockets of the Serbian countryside, while the Germans held the cities, the roads, the railways. Through an interpreter, Mihailović spoke, his voice heavy with relief. "Your men are safe," he said. "All of them. We have done everything possible." Musulin looked around the room, the scale of his mission suddenly crashing down upon him. "How many?" he asked. 250, Mihailović replied. "Maybe more. They are scattered across the hills. We are gathering them here." 250 American airmen. Shot down over Yugoslavia, they were ghosts who had fallen from the sky. Rescued by Serbian peasants and Chetnik fighters, hidden from German patrols for weeks, some for months, all of them praying for a way home. This was their last hope. This was Operation Halyard, the largest, most audacious rescue of Allied airmen in the history of the Second World War. And the story of how it came to be, against all odds, is a testament to the fact that it almost never happened at all. Let's rewind 6 weeks. It's late June 1944, at the 15th Air Force headquarters in Bari, Italy. Lieutenant Colonel George Crayer is poring over intelligence reports, and the picture they paint is grim. For months, American heavy bombers had been flying a perilous route over the Balkans. Their target? The Ploesti oil fields in Romania, the gas station for Hitler's war machine. The raids were crippling Nazi petroleum production, but the cost was staggering. Ploesti was a 1,500-mile round trip, a highway to hell that crossed directly over German-occupied Yugoslavia. The skies there crawled with anti-aircraft batteries and Luftwaffe fighters. Every week, dozens of American bombers, B-24 Liberators, B-17 Flying Fortresses, were being torn from the sky. Each plane carried a crew of 10 men: pilots, navigators, bombardiers, gunners. When a plane went down, those who survived bailed out, their parachutes carrying them down into enemy territory. If they weren't shot on the way down, they faced a lottery of life and death. The lucky ones were captured by the German army and sent to notorious POW camps like Stalag Luft III. The unlucky ones were found by local collaborators and handed over to the Gestapo or SS, who often executed them on the spot as reprisal for the bombing of German cities. But Krieger was seeing something else in the reports. Coded messages, smuggled out of Yugoslavia, were telling a different story. American airmen were alive. They were being hidden by local Serbs, protected by General Mihailović's Chetniks, dozens of them, maybe more. The problem wasn't logistics, it was politics. Early in the war, Great Britain had supported Mihailović, but by 1944, British policy had shifted. Winston Churchill, in the cruel calculus of geopolitics, now threw his weight behind Josip Broz Tito, the communist partisan leader. The British believed Tito was a more aggressive fighter against the Germans, and so Churchill cut off all support to the Chetniks, withdrew his liaison officers, and pressured America to do the same. President Roosevelt, trusting Churchill's judgment on the complex affairs of the Balkans, followed London's lead. In May of 1944, the last American officers were pulled from Mihailović's territory. The general was left isolated. No Allied support, no weapons, no recognition. He had only his men and the unwavering loyalty of the Serbian peasants. But the downed American airmen, they were still there, hiding in barns and cellars, waiting. The 15th Air Force couldn't just abandon them. Someone had to go in. Someone had to risk everything. That someone was Captain George Musulin. He had been there before, parachuting into Yugoslavia in 1943. He'd spent months with the Chetniks and had seen with his own eyes the profound courage of the Serbian people. He watched as villagers, who had next to nothing, shared the little food they had. He saw them hide American boys in their homes, fully aware that if they were discovered, the price would be instant execution. Entire villages would be burned, the men shot, the women and children deported to labor camps. Musulin argued, pleaded, and pushed. "We need to get those men out," he told his superiors. "Mihailović's people are risking everything. The Germans know they're there. It's only a matter of time." His commanders agreed, but their hands were tied. The British opposed the operation, calling it too politically sensitive. Supporting Mihailović would anger Tito. So Musulin did the unthinkable. He bypassed the entire chain of command and went straight to the top, to the legendary director of the OSS, General Wild Bill Donovan. Musulin laid it all out. 250 American airmen trapped, their own allies unwilling to help because of politics. Men would die, he argued, because of bureaucracy. Donovan took the case directly to President Roosevelt. He explained the situation in its stark, human terms. American boys, shot down serving their country, were being saved by penniless Serbian peasants, and they were waiting for their country to save them in return. Roosevelt's response was decisive. Politics be damned. He approved the mission and ordered the British to cooperate. Churchill's government agreed, reluctantly. Operation Halyard was a go, but the clock was ticking. German intelligence was closing in. Tito's partisans were on the move, hoping to eliminate their Chetnik rivals. If the partisans reached the village of Pranjani before the rescue, the American airmen would become hostages, bargaining chips in a bloody civil war. After 3 failed attempts to get into Serbia, due to aircraft malfunctions, thick clouds, and navigation errors, Musulin was furious. Each delay was a death sentence waiting to be signed. Finally, on August 2nd, the fourth attempt. The weather was perfect, the navigation was true, and the signal fire burned brightly. Musulin, Rajacich, and Jibi jumped. By dawn, they were standing before General Mihailović. The general greeted them with profound relief. "Your men are ready," he said. "We have been waiting." The airmen were a collection of ghosts. They were exhausted, scared, and many were injured, with burns, broken bones, and shrapnel wounds. Chetnik medics and Serbian families had done what they could, sharing their meager bread, their goat's milk, and the potent local plum brandy, rakia, which did wonders for morale. But there was another, seemingly impossible problem: the terrain. Central Serbia was a fortress of mountains and forests. There was no flat ground. The C-47 transport planes they needed for the evacuation required a runway, a clear, level strip at least 600 yards long. Mihailović's solution was as ingenious as it was desperate. "Can it be done?" Musulin asked, looking out at the endless hills. Mihailović smiled, a flicker of pride in his weary eyes. "It will be done," he promised. "My people have survived worse." And so the work began. An entire airstrip, built by hand, hundreds of Serbian villagers, men, women, and children, descended upon a mountain meadow with axes, shovels, and oxen. They worked in a symphony of desperate labor, cutting trees, pulling stumps, hauling rocks, and compacting the earth. They worked mostly at night, under shielded lanterns, their voices hushed. When German reconnaissance planes flew over during the day, they would herd livestock onto the half-finished runway, making it look like just another pasture. It was a race against time, a secret being kept from the Germans, from the partisans, and from the sky itself. By August 9th, it was ready, a 600-yard scar of raw earth carved from the wilderness. That night, as 255 anxious airmen gathered in the darkness, a distant drone grew into the roar of engines. 4 C-47 transport planes, flying without lights, guided in by Jibi's radio and 2 dim signal fires. One by one, the pilots performed a miracle of aviation, dropping their planes onto the rough, handmade strip, clearing the trees by mere feet. The moment the doors opened, it was organized chaos. "Load up! Move! Go!" The airmen scrambled aboard, packed in tight, sitting on the floor, holding onto cargo straps. And then, something extraordinary happened. The Serbian villagers, the families who had sheltered them, swarmed the aircraft for a final, tearful goodbye. The American airmen, with nothing else to give, leaned out of the doors, unlaced their combat boots, and tossed them to the families below. A rain of leather and laces fell upon the people who, for months, had worn only worn-through, handmade slippers. It was a gift of profound gratitude, a payment of honor. Then the doors closed. One by one, the heavy planes roared to life, racing down the short, dark runway. Each pilot pulled back on the stick at the last possible second, the bellies of their planes scraping the tops of the trees. But they were airborne. All 4 planes, carrying 100 men, were up, safe, and turning west for Italy. The operation continued. In the days that followed, more planes came. Daylight missions, riskier but more efficient, were now escorted by a swarm of 50 P-51 Mustang fighters. The fighters screamed over the valley, strafing nearby German garrisons to create a diversion. America's cavalry arriving in the sky. By the end of the operation in December, the numbers were staggering. In what was officially named Operation Halyard, 512 Allied personnel, 432 of them American, were rescued. Not a single aircraft was lost to enemy action. Not a single life was lost during the evacuations. It was a miracle of courage, coordination, and sacrifice, masterminded from Italy by another Serbian-American OSS officer, George Musulin. The rescued airmen, like Lieutenant Richard Fellman, who had been hidden in a barn for 4 months, never forgot. As he climbed aboard his flight, he turned to the family who had saved him, speechless. The farmer simply shook his hand. "Go home. Live. Be happy." he said. "That is thanks enough." But history, so often written by the victors, is a cruel storyteller. After the war, Yugoslavia fell under the communist control of Tito. General Mihailović and his chetniks were branded as traitors and Nazi collaborators. A vile lie, but one that was repeated until it became accepted truth. In March 1946, he was captured. The rescued American airmen, now safe at home, were horrified. They sent letters, testified before Congress, and pleaded with President Truman, offering the undeniable proof of their own lives that Mihailović was a hero who had fought the Germans. Their voices, 512 strong, were ignored. In the new political landscape of the Cold War, no one in Washington or London was willing to anger Tito, so they abandoned him. On July 15, 1946, a Belgrade court pronounced his sentence: death. 2 days later, at dawn, General Draža Mihailović was executed by firing squad. His body was buried in an unmarked grave, its location still unknown. The communist regime tried to erase him from history, but 512 men and their families refused to forget. In 1948, President Truman posthumously awarded Mihailović the Legion of Merit, America's highest military decoration for a foreigner. But in a final, gut-wrenching act of political cowardice, the award was classified secret. It was kept hidden from the public for 20 years, a hero honored in silence, a medal no one could see. Today, monuments stand in Serbia, at Pranjani and the other airfields, commemorating Operation Halyard. Elderly American veterans, some in their 90s, still make the pilgrimage. They come to hug the grandchildren of the families who saved them, and they cry together. And they remember. This story is not taught in most history books, overshadowed by the grand narratives of D-Day and Stalingrad. But to 512 men and the thousands of descendants who exist today only because of it, it was everything. It is a story of humanity in the midst of inhumanity. Of Serbian families with nothing who gave everything. Of American agents and pilots who risked it all to bring their boys home. It is the story of 512 men who walked out of hell, not because of grand strategy or politics, but because a forgotten general and an entire nation of peasants chose honor over safety. They chose to do the right thing, even when it would cost them their lives, even when the world would betray them. That is Operation Halyard, the forgotten miracle, the greatest rescue mission of World War II, and it is a story that must never be forgotten.